Man, this feels good. I've been waiting 2.5 years to talk about this movie. I have finally seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and I can finally talk about it in excruciating, painful detail that only nerds like me can honestly talk about. It's been since 2014, I've been waiting to talk about this movie, and it has been both a really slow process and a really slow wait seeing this movie come out, and both a really fast wait seeing this movie come out, if it makes any sense. It kind of crept up on me in some cases. Looking back in retrospect, it's been a really long time since we've revisited this part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's crazy. And after seeing the movie and after seeing what the Guardians of the Galaxy do best, which is guarding the galaxy, kind of like catching up with your best friends after high school. You learn both new stuff about them, and you get a bit of the same stuff that you remember about them. And you get a mixture of feelings of, oh, it feels like just yesterday I was hanging out with these guys, and even a bit of, well, actually it's been way longer than that. If you guys want the condensed Cliff Notes version of what I thought about it, I love the movie. Of course, everyone knows my love for the first movie. No matter what this movie was going to end up being, I was going to love it. Not exactly true. If it ended up being a piece of crap, I would tell you guys it's a piece of crap. But in my eyes, I thought the movie was great. As I'm doing the video right now, only having seen the movie once in theaters, and that's that. I haven't seen it since. It's been a month since I actually have seen the movie, probably over a month. I'd say that I like it just about as much as I liked the first movie. But I think I like it for completely different reasons that I like from the first movie. And it isn't without its flaws. It has plenty of flaws, which I'll get to later. But for the most part, I loved the movie. For starters, the first movie was more like a meet and greet with the characters. Like, you didn't really sit down and get to know them. You just sort of got an idea about them. Whereas this movie is almost like a Thanksgiving dinner with the characters. You get to learn every single thing about our characters that you possibly wanted to know about, and even learn some stuff about the characters that you didn't even know that you wanted to learn about. Each character is fleshed out more than they were even in the first movie. This isn't just told through dialogue to us by one character or by a number of characters. It's instead shown through the interactions with other characters. What the movie does really great, and this is something that a lot of movie sequels, not all, but a lot of great movie sequels that I've seen, examples like Empire Strikes Back, is that they decide to split up the characters and maybe pair them up with another character that you wouldn't usually see them paired up with. In the movie, for example, Rocket and Yondu are paired up. Learn more about Nebula and Gamora through their interactions and the reasons why they hate each other, and even get to know more about Drax and the character Mantis who is introduced in this movie. Also, if the trailers were not a dead indicator of this, the movie also introduces Ego the Living Planet as Peter Quill's dad, and we get to see a great interaction between those two characters catching up after being separated for years. And regarding Ego, I really loved the director James Gunn's reason for using Ego the Living Planet in this movie as not only Peter Quill's father, but also as the villain of the movie. Just to put a long story short, in the comics, Ego the Living Planet is not actually Star-Lord's father. It's actually a character named Jason, or Jason or whatever, who's the emperor of this alien empire known as the Spartax or the Spartoy Empire. I love these Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but I have never gotten that far into the comics. I was made aware of the fact that Jason was Peter Quill's father in the actual comics. In this movie, director James Gunn decided not to use that character simply because he just didn't like him. Which is really funny and both really refreshing to hear because, being a fan of, these Marvel movies and just comic movies in general, if they don't use this certain character in it and they replace it with another character, it's usually because of, film rights, distributions and disruptions and copyright claims and all that sort of stuff. It's just really refreshing to hear that they didn't use this character and instead opted to use another one just because he just didn't like him. And I can't vouch for him, I can't defend him, and I can't really agree with him at all because, again, like I said, I haven't really gotten that far into the Guardians of the Galaxy comics. I haven't really read anything with Jason as a character. Just simply put, each character in the movie has an arc throughout the entire movie. They all start somewhere and they end somewhere, and it makes sense where they end up. Especially with the character, and I dare even say the breakout character in the breakout performance of this movie, of Yondu. His character is the prime example of someone who starts somewhere and ends somewhere. Not only in this movie, but even going back to the first movie. Because in the first movie, and I'll just say this, Yondu was kind of a one-note character in the first movie. If you know Michael Rooker, he is great at playing asshole characters, and yeah, for lack of better words, that's all he was playing in the first movie. Especially if you know the character of Yondu from the comic books. If you guys need to know, Yondu in the comic books is a noble alien warrior who fought alongside other characters and eventually made the team the Guardians of the Galaxy. See the similarities? The first movie, he is a redneck alien bounty hunter who is head of a bunch of other redneck alien bounty hunters. Yeah, the South doesn't exist in space, and yet he has a Southern accent. Sure. I'll be damned if they did not overhaul this character completely from the first movie. And it's not like they just did it out of nowhere. It's not like they were just like, oh, we should have this character be a big thing. No, they planted seeds, obviously, that were in the first movie. You got a sense of who this character was in the very first movie. And they bring that full force in this movie. From the very first scene that you see him in the movie, you feel sorry for him. You know, trying not to delve into spoilers too much or anything, but the basic gist of Yondu's character that we find out in this movie is that he's an exile nobody. From what we learned in the first movie about him being the leader of the Ravagers, it's later revealed in this movie that he's the leader of the defunct version of the Ravagers. Like, the bottom of the totem pole Ravagers. That's both really, really funny and hysterically fucking sad. It's really funny because of all the shit that he ended up putting the characters through in the first movie, but it's also really sad because you find out that he's the peaked in high school guy version of a fucking alien bounty hunter. Yeah, peaked in high school Rob Lowe, that's Yondu, guys. That's fucking Yondu. You see him go from an exile nobody to being someone who is respected among the other Ravager factions that exiled him when he sacrifices himself towards the end of the movie, which I thank God they ended up killing Yondu in this movie. And not because I hated him. No, I just explained why I loved him in this movie. But because one thing in the Marvel movies that I absolutely hate, aside from the villains or the sometimes predictable plots, is that they have no sense of fatality or danger. It's really hard to have danger for a certain character in the movie when they announce that character's or that actor's contract for the next 5 movies 4 years ahead of time. They even went as far as to have Michael Rooker show up on the set of Avengers Infinity War wearing an Avengers Infinity War cast beanie, just so that they wouldn't have this ending of this movie leaked. Pairing him up with the other Guardians character, Rocket Raccoon, was a great choice because we get to see how both are very similar and very different to each other. They're both thieving, conniving thieves who do what they do only because they want to. You even see Rocket go from someone who doesn't give a shit about anyone else and does what he wants to do, like when he steals batteries, to actually giving a shit about the others and feeling really bad for the position that he put them online after seeing Yondu sacrifice himself. I see Peter Quill feel bad about him not having a dad, to him realizing that he actually did have a dad, and a good dad at that, when Yondu sacrificed himself. And we also see Gamora and Nebula hate each other at first, but begin to accept themselves. We even get to see Drax at first thinking that Mantis is a horrible, ugly creature, but actually accepting her and seeing the true beauty of her. On the inside. Also, just as a quick side note, the color correction in the visual of this movie are fucking breathtaking. I'll say this about the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. For the most part, the movie is stunning and beautiful and breathtaking. It's one of the most colorful and vibrant, eye-popping comic book movies I've ever seen in my life. That is, scenes that are not featured on Xandar, the home of the Nova Corps. Anytime the movie is placed there, everything looks muddy and gray. You can kind of see that with a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. 2 that come to mind are Captain America Winter Soldier and Captain America Civil War. In those movies, it makes a little bit more sense. Those movies are more realistic and grounded than a lot of the other Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, so it makes a lot more sense to have those movies reflect that in their color palette. Then we have the film's main villain, which is Ego the Living Planet, which is actually one of the very few Marvel villains that I actually really like. I put him up there with like the Winter Soldier or Loki as one of the better Marvel villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's one of the few villains in these movies who actually has some kind of reverence and some kind of weight on the plot. Like, I feel like the movie was built around him being the villain. In the comics, and if I'm wrong, please do correct me, because I have not really read too many comics with Ego in it. All I know about him is that he's just a big giant planet with a face on it, and that's about it. And basically all I got from him being called Ego was that, well, he's a big giant head in space. He's gonna have a big ego. And also, because comic books back in the day, like, a lot of characters were named certain things, like, for example, Ego the Living Planet, because, well, it was a dumb comic book-y name. There really wasn't too much thought into it. Aside from, like, maybe the superheroes, there really wasn't too much thought made into a lot of comic book characters. They were really just called this character or so-and-so based on the gimmick that they had around them. For this case, Ego the Living Planet was called Ego the Living Planet because he's a giant head. And what are people most associated with if they have ego? Giant heads. They actually make Ego the Living Planet live up to this name in the movie by having his big evil plan being recreating the entire universe in his own image by terraforming every single... Also, having the song Brandy, You're a Fine Girl be the basis and theme of the entire movie, as well as the theme for the villain of the movie, was just a great choice, especially through what you see Peter and his dad going through in the movie, and they explain it in a great scene. Probably my favorite scene in the entire movie. And also adds a great layer that was really not seen all that much in the first movie to the awesome mixtape. We get to the cons now, which first one off the bat is the character Mantis. Mantis is the only character in this movie that I felt like had nothing going on for her. And that's not to say that they won't do something maybe with her later in the sequel. If that's the reason why they introduced her here, that's perfectly fine. I can't wait to see her in a sequel then. But for the time being in this movie, she's fucking pointless. She's apparently an assistant to Ego and is kind of a surrogate daughter of some sorts being raised by Ego, but they really don't delve into that at all. They just give it a passing mention and that's it. And honestly, Mantis just felt like just a character just there to be dumb. Kind of was just like James Gunn wanted her to be in the movie just because he liked her in the comics and that's really it. And that's not even saying much because in the comics, she's a completely different character. In the movie, she's really incompetent and really stupid. And, well, again, not really stupid, but kind of naive and just childlike. In the comics, she's a badass hand-to-hand combatant. And, yeah, in the movie, she was just really nerfed compared to how she was, at least from what I remember in the comic books. So the film's secondary villain, the Sovereign, the gold alien people, they were kind of pointless. They either felt like they were there to get the ball rolling in the beginning of the movie or just to set up as the future villains for another movie, i.e. the Adam Warlock scene during the credits at the end of the movie. They even show up at the end of the movie, and I thought, oh, okay, they're going to show up and they might even help out the Guardians in fighting Ego. That kind of makes sense, but no, they don't even do that. They show up, they blow up the ship, and then that's it. The idea behind them is kind of cool. They're genetically altered people to be the peak in, physical condition. That's kind of a cool idea, but they don't really, again, do anything with it. Easily my biggest problem with the entire movie is that the movie, at least in my opinion, is just not that funny. Or at least as funny as the first movie, which is going to happen with a lot of sequels. Some sequels might not have as good as action. Some sequels might not have be funnier. And I really remember laughing at the first movie. I remember maybe because it was opening day, maybe because there was a lot of people excited to see the movie, but I remember people laughing their asses off in the theater when they first saw the first movie. And when I saw it, the same thing. I saw it opening weekend, and there was just a lot of dead, awkward silence in the movie. Anytime a joke reared its ugly head. And a lot of the jokes are funny. There's a lot of really funny jokes, but I'd say that, a lot of the jokes I laughed at were, the smaller, sort of hidden jokes that really weren't there to, be seen. There's obvious jokes that are there that the writers thought, oh, this is going to be a funny joke. This is going to be one that everyone laughs at. And really no one laughed at those kind of jokes. I only laughed at, the really small, hidden jokes that were there. And even then, they were, a light chuckle, maybe. The problem with a lot of the jokes in the movie is that they usually pop up right after a really heavy, really emotional thing has happened in the movie. And I'll give you a prime example. Again, delving into spoilers, if you don't want to hear this, then, click off the video or just pause it or whatever. We learn in the movie that, and this should be the Luke, I am your father moment. This should be this movie's version. We learned that in the first movie we saw from the opening that Peter Cole's mom died of cancer, we're assuming, which very sad, something that a lot of people can relate to, sadly. It's a very tragic, very sad way to open a movie. But we learned in this movie that it was actually because of Ego himself planting a tumor in Meredith Quill's brain. This should be a really heavy, really dramatic, really heart-wrenching moment that builds on events in the first movie. But they follow it up with a fucking David Hasselhoff cameo. 2 seconds after they reveal it. Yeah, think about that. Mom dying of cancer, David Hasselhoff. Yeah, not seeing where these two connect. It's really weird. It's kind of like, again, in Empire, Vader saying, Luke, I am your father, and then him pulling off his helmet and revealing it's Pam Anderson. It's yeah, that just doesn't work. like in the slightest. With all that said and out of the way, Guardian of the Galaxy is easily one of the most fun of the Marvel movies that I've honestly seen. One of the most fun comic movies I've seen, period. And probably one of the most fun movies you'll see this year. It is definitely a great sequel to the first movie. I won't say that it's Empire Strikes Back good, or even comparing it to another MCU movie, Captain America Winter Soldier good, but it is still a great, fun experience at the movies. And it's Spider Month, bitch.